So in terms of products now, my last guest, Eric, actually talked about the innovations. That's what this conversation really is all about, and using technology to actually capture most of the informal sector.
Right.
For you, do you think that there are actually products that can be marketed to this very key sector to actually get them to key in to being part of the contributory scheme?
Yeah, well, technology is our means. It's an infrastructure you can use. So a smartphone is a computer with a mobile device on it, so that helps you. But in the long run, it's much more about how to reach them and how to show empathy with their business purpose and their way to fill in their life and goals. So I think tuning to their needs is more important than just focus on technology gadgets. It's helpful, you can reach more people, but I think that's common practice for any practice and any business in the country. But the informal sector might, have some issues with liquidity at certain times. So do we allow them to grab some money out of their own savings? It's their money, they say. It's our money. And I think that's why also a lot of entrepreneurs are, self-employed entrepreneurs, are a bit hesitant about stepping into such a system because they said, well, we cannot touch it. Well, that has a reason. But if you can, mitigate that and say, okay, for this sector, we can have a partial usage of your funds in times of needs, and the rest will be fixed for later. At least it helps them to save for later. So then you get create more understanding and empathy with this group, and I think that's very important.
But then you see, Harry, the argument would be this is your retirement fund. It's not a pre-retirement fund. So
right.
At this time, we're looking at in the long run, when you're no longer you're able to do any form of work for whatever reason, either you're physically challenged or
right.
you're just owed. What are the options you think they can look at, if not necessarily having a pension, maybe a product that is specific that says at a certain age you can access this funds, or if for any reason you're disabled, you can access that specific
right.
fund. You don't have to wait until you're retired.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, you're completely right, and that's also the direction I see internationally going on. I see a movement from static pension funds at a certain age, which allows you to get some regular monthly payments out of the pot until you die, to a fund that is more flexible and will enable you on disability, on healthcare issues, on education. Permanent education would be very important, to switch for your jobs when you are 30, 40, 50. You need a year to redesign your life or redesign your career. So all these periods have to be covered financially. So I think that the pension system in the future will allow all these kind of interactions and will also fund that. That will have great impact on the value and the way we can finance it, because you have, for a greater part, of course, long-term investment with a certain return, but also for some part less return because it's short-term and more risky, or it might be very profitable, but that's pending the periods of the investment period. So I think this flexibility will arise, and in the future I expect that that will be also more individually tailored. So now we see these large funds taking care of large groups of people. It will become more and more individually tailored.
So how soon do you expect to see that? If you're looking at a timeline, do you expect to see it in a very short term, or yes. short to medium, or medium to long?
No, I think, well, short to medium, because the youth nowadays, I see it here, I see it in the Netherlands, are willing to become their owner of their own money and their own destiny. So there's a huge urge of getting more involved. Of course, they need understanding and they need help and they need tools to do so. But if that's in place and they are well educated, they can manage to some extent themselves. So then they will take their responsibility, and we can facilitate. So I think in the next generation or 2 generations, we'll see this happen.
So for you, what demography now should, for instance, the Pension Commission in Nigeria be targeting? Because we have the informal sector, largely 70% of the economy. What demography should be the focus now?
Well, of course, on both sides. So the ordinary working relationships with the plans and the informal sector. But I think looking at age, I think the young people are essential. It's a huge young generation in Africa and also in Nigeria that has to be educated and has to be taken along into a system. So I think it should be a well-spread strategy with a clear focus on the next generation, so the young people.
All right. Thank you so much, Harry, for coming on the program this morning and, of course, sharing your perspectives with us. Harry Smorenberg is the founder, World Pension Summit, also here in the nation's capital, Abuja, talking about innovations and, of course, giving us his perspectives on what should be done in Africa and Nigeria at large. But Business Morning will be back in just a moment. Don't forget the conversation continues online. I'm on Twitter. I'm at CTV Harriet, and people will be glad to mind your business. And don't forget that Channels Television has a wide coverage of this particular event. A number of panel discussions have actually started. You can also join it. Don't forget you can tweet at us and get your contributions heard as well. But Business Morning will be back in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Business Morning on Channels Television. We're live to you from the nation's capital, Abuja. Of course, a number of conversations have been on with regards innovation in the pension industry. I've had the Director General of the Pension Commission, and she's been talking about innovations that have actually been going on here in Nigeria and what the Commission is doing in that regard, particularly for the informal sector, where we have about 70% of Nigerians actually captured. So that's a very critical sector of the economy that they'll be looking at. These people, at the end of the day, even though you're an entrepreneur, you're working for yourself, you're an artisan, you don't have paid employment, so to speak, you should have the option of getting retirement benefits. You can pay yourself at the end of the day. You don't have to you don't have to be in penury at the time of retirement when you have to, sit back and enjoy all you've given in the service. So the Commission is working on looking at that particular critical sector of the economy, and she's also said here on live television that she'll be coming out for the launch very soon, so you need to watch this space. Now, conversations are on. The summit continues in earnest today. Today is the last day of this two-day summit here in Abuja, and the financial experts and the pension experts have been talking about a number of issues at this summit and what must be done to get the pension administration system right in the continent. Now, some of the issues which they listed as priorities are legislation, regulation, and a consistent enforcement by regulatory authorities. Let's quickly listen to this report and come back and wrap up the show.
Hundreds of millions.
It's a session where experts express their views on how to ensure better pension administration. Although some countries seem to have been doing well on that, this forum, according to organizers of this event, is aimed at sharing experiences so that lessons could be learned by participants. One after the other, they bear their minds on what should be done.
The question that we need to ask ourselves, which goes to the permissible investments, is how have these funds impacted the growth of the economy? And you will notice from the asset allocation and the permissible investments that it significantly has not done any amount of improvement into the Ghanaian economy. Why? The framers of the reform were of the view that in starting this, funds need to be in a safety asset allocation in fixed incomes.
Yet, some of the panel discussants see accountability, adequate regulation and enforcement as measures to be taken seriously in Africa.
As part of its developed and diversified strategy to sustain the competitiveness of the Mauritius jurisdiction, the FSC now licenses and regulates external pension schemes. FSC may authorize foreign pension schemes also to operate in Mauritius, provided they are fully compliant with their home country pension regulators' prudential requirements and meet the criteria set out in our regulation.
Moving into defined contribution, it's fine if you are secured somehow in a Pillar 1 system. You must have some kind of safety net. The ILO is, I'm not an ILO person, but I like their thinking. They are promoting at least a minimum pension of something like 30% of the last wages.
Pension plays an important role in poverty alleviation, especially for the elderly. Statistics by the International Labour Organization shows that only 1 in 5 workers is covered. This debate might just be a wake-up call for leaders in the continent to live up to their responsibilities of protecting the savings of its workers.
So more expert panel conversations continue today, discussing new methods, regulation, and of course tools that can be used in this very critical sector. The conversation continues even though the show is ending at this time. Many thanks for staying with us. Don't forget, you can have a conversation with me. I'm at CTV Harriet, that's on Twitter. And you can also send us an email to businessmorning@channelstv.com. I'm Harriet Agbenyi. Many thanks for spending time with us. Have a profitable day.